This is Studio Bounce with Roska. Come this way. Yo, Studio Bounce, this is Roska. Welcome to my studio. So this is my studio. How I built this studio was we got planning permission, and we just got like a office build company from online, and they come down and just laid the foundations down and set everything up. So, you know, it just saves money. I don't have to have any overheads or any other bills or renting anywhere. So I just wanted to just pay it off and have it there. How I got into producing was through my uncle. He was part of a sound system with my dad, and through my other uncles as well. They had a sound system called Ecstasy back in like the 80s, and it might have been earlier than that. And yeah, my uncle, he had his own studio in Nunhead, southeast London. And yeah, I used to go to the studio and sit in the corner every Saturday and just watch how they would just make music. And they made a lot of hip hop. A lot of, I was around a lot of dancehall, and my mum used to listen to a lot of R&B, so it's kind of like a standard progression for me to go through and make music. And then I started to find my own musical sort of interest through drum and bass, and through garage as well. And then, slowly moved on to grime as well. And then I kind of lost all my music, like I lost like a lot of my, my grime, and I started listening to a lot of broken beats and house back in like 2005, 6 and 7. And then I made my first track back in 2007. And then, yeah, from there on, it was just like a gradual progression up until here. People most know me for UK Funky. I started making that and started my first release back in 2008. So my first track is nearly 10 years old. That track is called Feline. And I started my first label then as well. DJ Pioneer was one of the first people to play my music back in, the September before, so in 2007. And yeah, it kind of was just a gradual build from there. I had, Genius, I had Super D, loads of people that were playing funky house and UK funky around that period. And then I think 2008 is where I really got my first sort of like step up in terms of, people actually really knowing who I was as an artist. I released that was my third release, was Climate Change. And yeah, it done the rounds and done really well for me. And then, it picked up on the eyes of Rinse as a record label, where I also done my first show on Rinse FM as well around end of 2008. And I signed my first deal and released my first album in 2010 as well. So what I'm working on now, previously I released In My Zone with Sarosi, that came out in April. And then we also have my collab with Just Now, called a Pharaoh's EP, and both of those releases came out on my own label, Roska Kicks and Snares, and we've had quite a few people pass through on the label. We've got Murder He Wrote, we've also had like DJ Naughty, MA1, Early Doors, Jamie George, and now we've got likes of like Bass Boy, TC4, Dean Leon as well. So quite a few artists that are passing through on the label. We've got some new artists as well called like DJ Mo2 and Leader Stray as well. And yeah, I've just been working throughout the year on my label, and also doing remixes as well. So I've got another release coming out on Hot Mum USA with DJ Shifty, which should be out pretty soon, or probably close to when this comes out. My studio must-haves, I've got some weird must-haves. I've got my Lucky Shit. I got this from Chesterton about 7 years ago, and yeah, it's been in every studio I've been in. And also I've got another one, which is my Dyson Hot. It also does cool, so when it's hot in the studio, I do cool. When it's cold, I do hot. Okay, so equipment-wise, I mean, most of my stuff is inside the box. I kind of use a lot of software rather than hardware. I like that plasticky feel. And my main things are my monitors, A7Xs, which I use. Now and then I might use my HS8s. They're not here right now, but yeah, I use HS8s now and then, my Yamahas. And also for mixing, I usually use my Pioneer headphones, and yeah, kind of like get some like close-knit sound rather than it being projected out, kind of like it really closing my ears. Also software-wise, I use Logic X as my main software. A lot of plugins I use, like the Contact plugins as well. And a lot of samples as well, so I use the EXS24 inside Logic for a lot of my samples, which are like one-shots and hits and stuff like that. So I'll talk a bit about my sound. My sound's quite percussive. I like a lot of percussion, a lot of drum movement, and I don't always like it to be straight or 4/4. It's like, I kind of like it to be a groove rather than a sound, you know what I mean? So I use a lot of like bongos and stuff, and I've been experimenting a bit more of more Afro stuff and more stuff that relates around my own culture as well, and bringing that into my sound. And one of the only things that I kind of brought into my sound, which has been around for years, is my tag, my Roska tag. I'll just play that for you. Roska. And how that came about was it was I used to be an MC basically back in 2004, 5 or whatever. So I kind of took it from an old tape when we used to record on TDK. So I took that was like on a reload or whatever, and then I kind of adapted it into my own music to kind of give my own take on it. And in terms of like subs, and I've got a sub that I specifically use on most of my tunes that you might have heard on like stuff like Climate Change. You might have heard it on my remix for Fortet back in 2011, and you heard it on stuff like BFF, which was out last year, and a few other tracks. So I'll play that for you. And this one's accompanied with an 808 as well, which I used. So that's that, and the track we're going through right now is In My Zone, which is featuring Serosi as well. So I'll be breaking parts of that down as well, and I'll show you the kick and the snare, what I mean when I talk about like my broken sound and not going 4/4. So here's the kick and the snare and how it all comes together. I always put a little bit of swing on my tracks as well, and I use a lot of like the Logic custom, standard swings on there. I think this one's on 16.1 if I'm correct. So I use that a lot on like the claps and the snares. Percussion wise, I mix it up between original stuff played in either via my keyboard or via my drum machine, or I'll just grab loops and I'll chop loops up and I'll recreate something else with them. So a lot of them are like royalty-free loops that I've got from like sample packs and a few other things. So, and you can hear right now. I'll play it for you. So a lot of like ethnic and Afro kind of drums shuffling throughout the whole track. I kind of like that, and I put like a stereo widener on them as well to kind of give it a fuller feel. I mess about with a lot of like distortion as well to kind of give it a harder punch as well. Also on this I've got the hats on there as well. So again with the hats I like to mess about with open and closed hats and pan them left and right as well, just to give them a different kind of feel. I'll play this one now for you. Again, same thing. I put a stereo widener on them as well, and it gives it like a nice little phasing sound behind them as well. So, and then let me flick through. What I do is I usually make stuff between 2 different projects. So I'd have like the stems in one, which I just showed you on that one, and I would also have like the full project where I've basically started it. So the first track, In My Zone, it was actually called Windbreaker before I gave it to Serosi to voice. Got no time for chat. Think a boy gal and he's fine with that. And if you try to back the 16 caliber, we'll put an end to that. Them should I know, man, I wouldn't know. So back to like the subs and stuff. I'll bounce off all the subs. So I use like a plugin called Monster 808 Monster for the 808 on the track, and then in between that I have the subs, which is, let's have a look where they are. So I've got a standard Roska sub which I use, and I use EXS24 to mess about with it. Oh yes, it's on the thing, is it? Probably can't even hear it. So yeah, I mess about with a lot of pitch bend on there. Also sometimes I mess about with the actual EQing of it on there, or I mess about with a separate EQ through the actual track itself and through on that sub as well. So yeah, and with the horns, I usually bounce everything off. That's why I had on a separate project. So with this one, here's the sound of the horns. So we've got the horns in there, and I'll play the whole track. Roska, 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 Roska. That's with all the parts in there basically. So what I'll do is now is I'll show you what I did with the track with Sarosi on there as well. Sarosi smashed it, so he actually made it come a bit more to life because it was actually going to be released as a track on its own. And then Sarosi came back and was like, I've done it, here you go. So we kind of, he doesn't talk like that, by the way. So yeah, we'll play it from the beginning so you can get the gist of it.
When I'm in my zone, everything blessed, clothes look good, smell fresh.
Yeah, so with adding Sarosi on, it just gave it a bit more character, and then I was able to add a bit more onto the track. So I added sort of like an ending to it as well, and you know, added a few more instruments in there. So I added this nice synth which I found. I don't actually remember where I got it from, but it sounded really good in there. So I added loads of little bits in there to kind of fill it out, and even on this bit as well, when there's like an extra 2 bars onto the second verse of this as well. So.
So if you're ready for the war buster, we have the rusty motor rush. So we're not afraid of no boy, she's got ashes and dust to dust. When I'm in my zone, everything legit. Tell you don't move, don't fidget. Tell them give me their digit. When I'm in my zone, everything blessed. Clothes look good, smell fresh.
Yeah, so that's the main parts of the track, to be fair. So I'll kind of mess about with the whole thing in one project, and then I move it to another project to mix down again, and even the vocals, they're on a separate project to mix down, and then I combined it all together, and then end up with In My Zone. Right, that's it, Studio Bounce. It's time for you to leave. Thank you very much for passing through. Don't forget you can catch my label out and about. Also, don't forget to check out the releases over on Spotify as well, and also check out my own releases, and yeah, get out.